Okay, hi, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the third part in our Advancing Women of Color Leaders in the Credit Union Movement series. This is, again, our third session, and we're really excited to have you here. We have some wonderful speakers lined up, panelists who will join us for a facilitated conversation. For those who may be joining us for the first time, my name is Monica Copeland. I'm the MDI Network Director at Inclusiv. And just for a little bit of context, we've been hosting this series since the summer. We started off with a series in June, which was intended to describe the intersection of race and gender and bringing the conversation with kind of held and led by women of color leaders who have held different roles in the credit union industry. In particular, we were looking in June for different stages, different career stages. And so we wanted to feature women who had long, rich histories, 20 plus year careers, kind of legends in the industry. So we featured them first. Our second part of the series was women of color who had kind of mid-career, 10 plus years in the credit union movement. And this session in particular, we wanted to round it out with women. We're describing it as women who are on the rise. So it can be, a handful of years in the industry, 10 years, 15 years. And so we'll talk to you more about them in just a second. I just want to share our agenda for the call. So I'll say a few words, just again, background and context and a little housekeeping. We'll then introduce my colleague, Ms. Deborah Boatwright, who will be facilitating the conversation today with this panel discussion and the panelists, and she'll be introducing them. And then we will save time for audience Q&A. We love that back and forth. We love for you to go ahead and use the chat if you'd like. You can also, so as you're hearing things or have follow-up questions, you're welcome to type them in anytime. And then we'll also, you can unmute the lines later on the call where you'll have a chance to even ask the question directly. So just again, as I mentioned at the top, this session is going to be recorded. So it'll be shared for anybody who may have to leave early, or if you're listening to this later, we'll make sure you guys have the recording link and some information again on the speakers. So I do want to say a little bit about my colleague, Ms. Deborah Boatwright. She has been with us from the very beginning in terms of the series. You might have seen her on previous sessions, but I wanted to tell you a little bit about her background. Ms. Boatwright is an affordable housing and community development expert. She specializes in forging partnerships that unite the public and private sectors to improve housing and financial options for low and moderate income families. Holding key positions over the years, Deborah has worked across the country to strengthen community organizations, particularly those led by people of color. And most recently, she's been working with faith-based credit unions and is on the board of a credit union in Brooklyn. We're delighted to partner with Deborah here at Inclusiv, and we've been working together for many years. And so please welcome Ms. Deborah Boatwright. Deborah, I'm going to turn it over to you to do some introductions of the panels.
Sure. Thank you so much, Monica. It's really a pleasure to be here. I've been attending the last two sessions, and they're so inspirational, and I've learned so much. Even as I think of myself as off the battlefield, I've left the battlefield, but you're never too old to learn more. And so I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for that introduction. So we'd like to get started with the panelists. I'm excited. These young people have such tremendous careers already. And so we're going to be really enjoying their conversation. I like to call it, I'm bringing them to the kitchen table. And that's sort of a term I've used throughout my work with community development, is that we're inviting you to our kitchen table. So we have Maricela Castillo, who is the research consultant for CUNA Mutual Group, and she's responsible for their multicultural business strategies at CUNA Mutual. She's been involved with the credit union for 15 years. She looks like a baby, right? And is an intern and started her full career with CUNA Mutual in 2017. She is the recipient of the AACUC Commitment to Change Young Professional Leadership Award. So we're happy to have you here, Sela, and looking forward to all that you have to share with us. Next, we have Zara Collins, who's been with the Toledo Urban Federal Credit Union since 2020, and she's responsible for identifying and pursuing resources that are vital to the enhancement of fulfillment of Toledo Urban Federal Credit Union. Her responsibilities include cultivating new and maintaining existing relationships. And I know in my work that has been a very important area in terms of credit unions and the larger community. Zara is a 2021 recipient of Toledo's 20 Under 40 Leadership Award. Zara, thank you so much. I'm so interested in what you were telling us before we started about your family legacy. It's wonderful that you folks are still engaged in the family business, and that's a bar. So after she leaves us, she will be going to bar 10. And I know that's a lot of fun. Next, we have Donna Dorman, who is the Chief Experience Officer from the American Credit Union Coalition. She enhances the member experience, the operational efficiency, and amplifies the AACUC brand. And for all of those, I don't know how many of you on this Zoom was at the conference this summer. Wow. I know that Donna had something to do with that. It was a powerful, powerful conference in St. Pete's, and we all learned so much. It was really great to get together. She's a seasoned executive with more than 10 years of experience in the credit union movement. She has received numerous awards, including being named Woman of Influence by the Albuquerque Business Journal and Rookie of the Year by the Credit Union Executive Society. So we want to thank you, Donna, for being here. That's wonderful. We also have Christina Sauve, who's the CEO of Cooperative Federal, a low-income designated community development credit union. And I understand that you just received that designation, so kudos to you and your team. She's a dynamic leader who has spent 15 years at Co-op Fed's management team, serving as the Chief Operating Officer before becoming CEO in 2019. Well, congratulations to you. And Christina was instrumental in Co-op Fed earning the Juntos of Enzamos designation from Inclusiv. Wow, we're so proud of you and all that you and your team have achieved. So, Monica?
So we can just go ahead and dive in onto the questions. We're ready to just take it from there.
Oh, great. Okay, is everybody ready? This is going to be a fun afternoon. And let's start. This is a question for everyone, so don't be shy, just jump in. Please tell us a little bit about yourself and your credit union journey. How did you hear about credit unions and get into the movement? And what factors made you decide that the credit union industry was the field for you? Anyone can start.
So my name is Regina Cotton, and I've been in the credit union industry for about over 30 years, 33 years maybe. And I started as a teller, and I just kind of fell into the position by, someone told me a credit union was hiring. And currently I'm the AVP of mortgage lending. I've been in mortgage lending over 20 years. And I work for Ventura County Credit Union. We're in Southern California, and we're about 1.3 billion.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
I'd be happy to go next here. So I started out working at Cooperative Federal in 2005 when I answered an ad for an open executive assistant position. I was recently graduated a couple of years prior from high school. And the credit union has actually, since before I started, since the late 90s, been designated as a CDFI and low income designated. We just recently got our MDI designation as a minority depository institution. But that's key because that was part of the mission when I joined, and that was why I joined. The ad headline was seeking activists posing as bankers, which drew my attention immediately, right? And that very clearly conveyed that idea that this isn't a job about finance, which was not my background. My major was cultural and social psychology. So I was pretty far away, right, from any idea of finance or business. But as a person, and I'm sure this is going to resonate right with a lot of us, is someone who grew up in a working poor household, whose parents both grew up in public housing. This felt so impactful. It felt like something that like I could see benefiting generations of people and just making such a difference in the community. And that's really what I wanted to do. So that is how I ended up at Cooperative Federal.
Wow, that's wonderful. And I was doing a little reading on Cooperative Federal. You folks are really a grassroots credit union. You started in 1982, somewhere around that, and really went knocking on doors to get
Yeah.
people to join this credit union. So, so kudos to you.
I'll go next.
Okay.
So I was an accident. I was running. So the Toledo Urban Federal Credit Union, it was started in 1996. And in 1996, I was a freshman in high school. But my dad and my parents were members of the credit union. So once I graduated, I had an account with the credit union, and the credit union actually helped me get my first brand new car. We went, it was my junior year of college, and we went to go get this car, and I got scolded by Suzette, who's our CEO. She's known my family for a very long time. And she said, "You just couldn't wait, could you?" Because we went and we did it at the dealer. And then we had to bring it back to the credit union to get the better interest rate. But I just had to have this car. And I have a picture of me with my first brand new Toyota Echo car, junior year of college, outside of the credit union after she redid the deal, because I couldn't wait. And so that's kind of been that give and take relationship over the years that I had with the credit union. Moving up to 2020, you would come in and you would have some transactions, or I'll be doing something on behalf of my parents. And, you know, Suzette would have a conversation or not have a conversation. There was a time where it was like, "Please don't say anything to me, please." But in 2020, we were sitting down with my parents again, doing some business. And she said, "Larry, Linda, you're so lucky to have Zara." And I said, "Well, you got kids that are my age. I've known them, you know, we went to preschool together." And she goes, "Yeah, but have you met my kids?" I'm like, "Yeah, I know them my whole life." And I said, "Do you need help?" And she said, "I've only been trying to get you here for a couple of years now." And so my running stopped in 2020. And I started as a consultant and doing some special projects. And my first special project, Monica knows this, was writing CDFI TA, and it was trial by fire, and literally ended up, you know, that make or break moment. And we had a make versus a break, and that's how I ended up here at Toledo Urban. And you know, from being a member to being someone who can really express to community, because that is my background, is working in community nonprofit organizations, what it is that we do and what we mean for our community, and how we uplift and build our community, and being able to tell that story to any and everyone who will listen in order for us to advance our mission. And so I stopped running, and now I'm here.
Well, that's good for you. It was a good journey, but it's also good to stop. And community is at my heart. So I totally get everything that you've said. Danya?
Yes, hi everyone. So I stumbled into credit unions like so many people do. I was, pursuing a degree in business, as well as I thought I was going to do marketing my whole life. So I was working for a PR company and had finished my MBA program, and was just passively looking to make sure that I was being challenged. And I came across a job posting for a role of a friend of mine, and I called her, and she decided to stay home with her firstborn and not go back to the credit union, but she encouraged me to apply. And I had no idea what a credit union was, had not been a member, saw them on campus, right, but didn't know that credit unions were for me. And I remember on my telephonic interview, I had a Wikipedia pulled up and I had my headphones in, and I did my research beforehand, but just in case I didn't want to stumble on really what a credit union was. And so, yeah, I was brought on the team. And I later learned a few years ago that my granddad served on a board for a credit union and on their credit committee for a small credit union in South Carolina. So 11 years, 2 credit unions, many leadership or credit union programs leader, and now a trade association leader. Yeah, I'm still in this credit union movement. I still find meaning and purpose. I think it really resonates with me because of my upbringing as a military kid, so being really service-minded, and also a person of faith, so being a part of a lot of service-oriented people that are collaborative. You know, we're all about improving people's lives. So I think all of that really sticks with me and feeds my soul.
That's great. That's a great story. Thank you so much, Danya. And so Sayla, I don't think we've
Yeah,
heard.
so for me, I just want to make a quick correction. So I have been working in the credit union industry for about 5 years, going on 6. But my family has been involved in credit unions since I can remember. So my mom started when she started working in total, she started working as a teller in a credit union. And so for me, the credit union employees at that, they were like family to me. I would go constantly. But growing up, I didn't really fully still understand what a credit union was, or why when I first got my account, I was going to be at a credit union. So when I was 13, I decided I wanted to do market research. That was my goal in life. And when I went into college, I decided that my best route forward would be through marketing. So I did marketing. I found a professor to help me with my own research. And I started looking at multicultural communities. And an opportunity presented itself from CUNA Mutual Group, which is a company I now work for, to do research on the unbanked and the underbanked, and to figure out how credit unions can better serve them. And it seemed right up my alley. It was aligned with the things I wanted to focus on. It was helping communities like mine, and everything just kind of lined up. And so I was able to really dig into what credit unions were, why they were so helpful, the impact that they have, and the change that it can have on systems that weren't really made for people like us. And through all of that research and through the competition, I actually won at my college and went on to a national competition that CUNA Mutual Group hosted. And I competed against 5 other graduating seniors. I was a freshman in college at the time. And I got 5th out of 16, and I took that as a learning opportunity. I took that as finding my values and my passions, and the next steps forward. I was lucky enough to then be offered an internship from that competition, from the team that I'm now on, which is the multicultural business strategy team. And that's kind of how I fell into the credit union movement. I was able to see everything that aligned and really able to live into that. And I just kept coming back every year. So I interned at CUNA Mutual Group for 3 years, and I started full-time in January of 2020. And I've been working with different credit unions, as well as internally on a lot of different things, and I have loved every second of it.
That is such a dream come true, right? That you're right where you should be. And look at that smile. I can't believe it. I feel the same way about my community work. So I'm going to go backwards a little bit. I'm going to stay with you, Sayla, and the question, and then I'm going to go to Donna, because the question is, for those of us here and also on the call who are not familiar with affinity groups, I want you to help us understand what CUNA Mutual does, and then I'm going to, turn it over to Danya and say, what does AACUA, what's their mission? And then we'll get to the credit union folks to tell a little bit about their individual credit unions. Okay?
Yeah, definitely. So CUNA Mutual Group was born out of the credit union movement. So Estes Park in Colorado, CUNA and CUNA Mutual Group were both formed. And so we really have been a part of the movement since the very beginning. And we serve about, I believe it's about 95% of the credit unions in the US, along with a couple of territories outside of that. And we help with everything. So we have insurance products for not only members and specific customers, but also for products for the credit union. And so we help serve credit unions as well as our members. We do research, we have products, we help with resources and connecting and presentations, and we really kind of try to do all of it in order to better serve our members and our communities. We're also extremely active in just a lot of partnerships. So we work a lot with AACUC actually as well, NELCUP as well, and Inclusiv, and in order to kind of share the research and the findings that we have to better help our credit union customers connect with their members and kind of see the best path forward, not only through products, but also just through services.
Great explanation. Thank you so much. Danya, you want to tell us about African American Credit Union Coalition?
Absolutely. And yes, we definitely love Q Mutual Group and we love Inclusiv and all of our members. AACUC, it's a 501c3 nonprofit. We were created in 1999. And the purpose was to increase diversity within the credit union movement through advocacy and professional development. Since then, we've really become an industry leader when it comes to helping enable credit unions to be more diverse and inclusive. In fact, earlier this year, again in 2022, we were awarded the Anchor Award from the National Credit Union Foundation's Board of Directors. And that is a standout award that's not given every year as part of the Herb Wegner Memorial Awards. And we received it because of our initiative, Commitment to Change, Credit Unions Unite Against Racism. And so the foundation felt that we were an industry leader in uniting everyone in the financial services in the wake of George Floyd's murder, the pandemic, and then all of the social unrest. So we're quite proud of that moment and knowing that this organization started with just a head nod of a few individuals, a few African-American professionals who were at GAC years ago. And a head nod is just that universal ICU in the Black community, and they organized this organization, and now we're 1,200, 1,400 members strong. We provide a slew of professional development opportunities from our DEI Academy to our mentorship program and a lot of things in between. But I'll leave you with this in terms of the true value of an affinity group like AACUC. It's, yes, the professional development and the networking help, but being able to see someone that looks like you, who may be holding a leadership position or is doing great things that in your normal day-to-day you don't get to see, really is impactful and meaningful. And a great use case is our Texas Regional Chapter President, Delana Hewling. She shared this during our conference last year that she would not have applied for a CEO role at a credit union had she not come to an AACUC conference and seen sort of Black excellence and seeing people that look like her holding high-level positions. So that's just the power of being in community with either like-minded or, again, like-minded people.
Thank you so much, Donna. Well, we certainly know AACUC. I mean, they are a real trailblazer, in this movement. I'm new to this movement, 3 or 4 years. I come from housing, development, government. And once I met Renee, I was taken in
Yes.
terms of the credit union. She's a force to be reckoned with. So thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. We love Renee Sadie-White.
Yeah, so now we turn to our MDI credit unions. Tell us about your credit union. What does MDI mean? Who are the people that you serve? What are the communities that you're engaged in? Who wants to start, Christina or Zara?
I can I'll get started.
Okay.
I'll just a couple of things here, I guess. So let's see. We've been on a path for our MDI designation for a while now, for a long time. I would say probably about a decade at this point. More than 50% of our members who have joined the credit union are considered minorities. In Syracuse, we serve, our credit union serves, the largest group would be African Americans, followed closely by Latino or Latina families or individuals, and Asian American, white, and a small slice of Native American. We're the Onondaga Nations, just south of Syracuse. So there's 3 components to being an MDI. One is around your membership being majority minority. The other is around your field of membership being majority minority. So the folks who are eligible to join your credit union. And Syracuse, the city of Syracuse reached that benchmark a couple of years ago with the 2020 census. The piece that took a little bit longer was for our board demographics to catch up to our staff demographics and our membership demographics, right? And that just required some intentional conversations, and for us and for our board, because we have such a mission that's very specific and serving people who are underserved, but people who also wish to work for social justice. whether they may be able to go anywhere for their financial services, but that's important to them. This was maybe an easier conversation to have, but it did take time. And it took white board members intentionally and thoughtfully and verbally saying they were going to step away to make that room. And I'll pass it over to Sarah.
Great lessons learned. Great.
So,
Yeah, go ahead, Sarah.
so Toledo Urban was chartered in 1996, and we serve our footprint. We have this like fun squiggly map line, but we are Central City, Toledo, Ohio, and we serve the primarily low census tract that are in the city, which is Central City, Toledo. The credit union, we've been located and always have been located in the Junction neighborhood, which is one of the oldest neighborhoods in Toledo, which is predominantly African American. We say that we're the cornerstone of this community because we're literally and figuratively and literally on the corner of two of the oldest neighborhoods, and expanding across the street from us into the second oldest neighborhood. And I think we've been MDI from the beginning. Our board has been majority predominantly African American since its inception. Our membership, I think we're at 48,000 or 4,800, excuse me, not 1,000, 4,800 members. But they're majority African American. We do have some Latino members, but the population that we serve in Central City is African American and predominantly single fathers, which is crazy. You wouldn't think that, but when we look at our demographics, that is the majority of our membership are males, and many of them are single dads. So when we look at our community, that's what we're looking at is the oldest neighborhoods in the city of Toledo, Central City, which is right in the center of the city.
Wow, thank you for that information. So for those out there who are not MDIs, but you heard from our two leaders and that you think that you may be eligible to apply, reach out to them, and find out exactly how they came about filling out the application, getting designated. There is money available, at various times, grants for MDI credit unions. So you should really take advantage of it. And certainly Monica, who is the network coordinator director, can also help you with getting more information and getting engaged. Okay, so now we know a little bit about you. We know a little bit about your credit union. We know that you are stars in your own right. So now we're going to turn inward a little bit. What inspired you to become a leader? We always hear about, well, at least me coming up through my career is that I had several mentors at different stages in my life to put me where I ultimately ended up at. Is that so? I want you ladies to talk about think a little bit about who influenced you, who was that mentor. Maybe that person didn't really know that they were a mentor, but you really, took some lessons from them and you learned a lot and you stretched your wings, but they were really the wind beneath your wings. So you want to talk a little bit about the mentors, how they helped you, and what did you learn from them? Anyone can start.
I'll jump in.
Sure,
So
right.
I think I consider myself a natural born leader. I'm the middle child, so when my older sister is around, I definitely default to her, but she's not always with me, right? And I think I credit my parents for the way that they raised me and being role models for, seeking a standard of excellence. And I think by de facto, sometimes that excellent standard means stepping in as a leader. So whether it was a group project or, serving on a volunteer committee, maybe it's the facilitator in me. I like to connect the dots, and sometimes that just means assuming the leadership role. And I do feel very fortunate and blessed that most, if not all, I would say all of the people that I've reported to in the past, I would consider them a mentor. And I say that because they were unselfish with their time, their talent, their knowledge, their network, and also best practices. Like they were able to get out of the way, share with me what works for them, what didn't work for them, but more importantly, encourage me to step out and try things that I probably wouldn't have pursued knowing myself, right? And sometimes having that mentor, they're able to see either your potential or a skill set that may be underdeveloped, that if you really leaned into it, you could excel in a whole new way. So I'm grateful. I can't name one. The list would be too long, but I think those leaders are the ones, those mentors really have shaped my leadership and my desire to be a leader and do the same for others.
Thank you. I mean, it doesn't mean that you have to share one. You've put that out there in the universe. And so those folks that have helped you, I'm sure they're feeling it somehow, some way, because they see you as a terrific leader. Who's next? Christina, you want to share?
Sure thing. I would have to highlight our former CEO and one of our founders, Ron Ehrenreich, as my most key and critical mentor. I did not see myself as a leader. I think I'm just going to really echo what Danya said. He was selfless. He handed over power, access to networks, credit for things, whether I deserved it or not, frankly. He insisted on me attending events, getting me to trainings, insisting, especially as we were talking more and more about a transition, on having me attend events that are supposed to be CEO only, whatever else it may be. He was the first person in my life who said, I think you can accomplish anything you set your mind to, which, is just like such a powerful thing to hear, right? I think the other thing was he was strategic, right? This was his baby. This credit union has a specific mission and a focus, and he knew he needed to be doing this kind of planning for future leaders so that our mission would continue to be carried out.
Wow, that's huge. The selfless part, because so often we're going to talk a little bit about leadership style, and sometimes you don't get a leader that's selfless, or a person of influence. It's all about them. Who's next? Who would like to take that up? Sayla?
I can go next.
Sure.
So I have to echo Christina's sentiments as well. I did not think of myself as a leader. I took a step back when I heard it, and I appreciate it so much, and I'm so thankful to be a part of this panel. And I think there's probably some underlying imposter syndrome that I think we all feel when things like that are told to you. But yeah, so for me, it was super powerful to have people tell me that my voice should be heard. And then my mentors and my supporters across the board tell me, your voice should be heard. And if you shake while you say it, that's okay. Opal Tomaszewska, my manager, tells me that all the time. She's one of my biggest mentors, my biggest supporters, taking the time to tell me things that I had no idea. I'm the first person in my entire family to have a job that is like a full-time corporate level, like office job. I did not know more than half of the things coming into this, how I should act, the way that you walk or present yourself in meetings, all of it. And having her support and her mentorship throughout all of that has been so extremely helpful. And I think that idea of like, how I became or came into this idea of a leader, a lot of it is just because I like to rock the boat. I like to ask questions and question the way that things have always been done. And I think that's a lot of why I do the research that I do within the multicultural space. And I think that has kind of pushed me into this role of how to hopefully help to lead the movement in a positive way. So I appreciate all my mentors for telling me that I can do that and for being there as my backup when I falter a little bit.
Wow, that's huge. Zara, so who's your mentor?
I'm kind of like Donna. I have a whole bunch of them. But I can say that even from, going back to high school, my African American studies teacher, I was groomed. I went to a predominantly African American school, the oldest school in Toledo. And when I moved back to Toledo, I went to teach and coach there first. I coached volleyball, and I stayed up underneath that person. And my dad's a graduate. So that whole mentorship of that alumni experience when you go to one of those schools where everybody in the community is involved and they are like, oh no, you're so-and-so's daughter and you went to school with my son, or you went to school with my daughter, and we're going to push you. So I just kind of had that pillow of support around me, pushing like, okay, you're trying to do what? All right, let me make a phone call. And here in this credit union space, it's crazy because, like I said, I've known Suzette for a very long time before I even came into the space. And she was one of those people pushing, well, what are you doing now? And now I'm here with her and she continues to push. We have what I call our CEO moments, where I'm just sitting in her office and we're talking and we talk things out, and I run things by her. And it's just amazing to be able to be in a room with people who have conversations with you and are listening to you and aren't saying, no, you're too young, or you're not ready, or stop moving so fast, or, it's not your time yet. I think just being blessed to have people around you who, are preparing you for the baton, not necessarily, ready to pass it or, giving it to you and throwing you out there, but preparing you for it. And I think that's what the big thing about mentors and the mentors that I've had in my life, they're preparing me for that next step, because they know that they're not always going to be in that position. They're ready to, and they're grooming. And I think that's the best thing that I can say about any mentor that I've had, and the mentors that are still in my life, they're grooming, to say, you can do this when you're ready. And that's important.
Wow, that's awesome. I've always said, I have a son now and he's, almost going to be 50, but I've always said, and I was a single parent, that it takes a village. It really takes a village. And those folks who are doing the mentoring are really our unsung heroes. They don't get enough credit because they're just doing it out of selfishness and the goodness of their heart and the ability to see what they see in you. So good stories, great stories. Okay, so I'm going to make it now a little more personal. So you're a leader, Selah, accept it. You're a leader, join the rank, here you are. I want you to think a little bit about, as you're developing as a leader, Danya, Christina, Zara, what's your leadership style? I mean, have you come into your own at this point in time to have a leadership style? And if you don't know it and you don't have it, it's okay. Because when I was your age and someone asked me, I'm like, a leadership style, I don't know. I just come to work and do the job, right? But think about it for a minute. Are you developing it? And if it is, what do you think that it is? Is it autocratic? Is it democratic? Are you a strategic thinker? Are you a decision maker? Like Selah was saying, she says, she comes out, she says it. She asks the question, she probably makes a decision while people are thinking about it. But what is your leadership style? So help us understand that. And if you're not there and you're still working on it, let us know that too, because there are folks out there that are probably in the same position that you're in.
I'll go first.
Sure.
So I see things in big pictures. But I also compartmentalize. So I'd say that I fall into like that strategic, but direct leadership style. I want to put the plan out there and say, this is what I'm thinking about. But then I want to kind of push from behind individuals towards the different things that are a part of that plan. Like, okay, well, you should kind of think about going here and you should go like, I want to play chess. So as I see the big plan, I'm like, okay, I'm going to put my pieces where they need to go and, let them do what they do.
I want to tell you, I've been a community developer for 30 years. You're a leader because that's what leaders do, is that you sort of strategically think about it, you get your team behind an idea, and then you help motivate people to get that work done. So kudos to you. Who's next? So you got it. You got it going on in terms of your style. Who's next? Danya, you want to go?
Sure, I saw Christina go off mute, so I'll jump in. Yes, I relate to Zara, where I think, you know, if you were to look textbook, I think it's described as agile leadership or servant leadership. But for the longest time, I've figured that my major objectives as leader are to remove roadblocks, to provide the vision, get out of my team members' way, equip them with the tools necessary to get the job done, and also give them the space to get it done. And how they get it done, I've learned is less important than what gets done. So if we're all driving towards that same desired outcome, how they might derive there, it may be different from what I would do, but it's important for me as a leader to provide them considerations so that they don't fall into any pitfalls, right, that we could have prevented. But again, being okay with the way that they do it, as long as we get to the same outcome. And I think it's important, I've learned from my leadership style, to help foster cultures of trust, of learning, of curiosity and trial and error. I think that makes you a more independent thinker and contributor to the team. I think it enables more engagement and fulfillment. And so it really works out when everyone is mission driven. And I think ultimately I like to develop people's potential as a leader, because I don't want to be the smartest person in the room. I don't want to have all the answers. I think we can drive better solutions collaboratively together. So if I can help marry strategy and execution and work through others and see them succeed, that just is a big win for me.
Wow, that's powerful. That's powerful because you're using the trust and the unity of the group with, you know, your sort of setting what the goals are to, as you're saying, it's to move it along and to get to the end result. Who else? What about Christina or Sayla?
Yeah, I mean, I think I definitely have a very collaborative leadership style as well. And I think that just does work well with our size of organization and our mission and our values, right? So I'm not looking to kind of top down dictate decisions, but build consensus, be open, be like clearly open to challenges and different questions and the questions you don't want to hear. And I do think that one of the things that I am working on is knowing maybe a little bit more quickly when I need to switch from that usual style to the decision style, or the like, all right, we're gonna, this consensus building process is stuck and we need to step back, or we need to, you know, reframe this or add information, whatever it may be, because sometimes you have to do that, right? You have to make the decision, you have to make the call, or you have to push something forward, or which styles up. And I think you also have to surround yourself with people who have leadership styles that are going to complement yours as well.
That's great. Taylor, you may not be, you know, supervising anyone or have a team of folks that you need to get behind, but just in terms of your colleagues and working on teams and, you know, being a part of a team, how do you manage that? What's your style there?
Yeah, I definitely think that's something that I'm still working on figuring out, like when to use which different strategies. But I like to think about it in the sense of coming into it with goals in mind and asking questions of the people around me to see kind of where everyone else is, to see what framework that they're in, and to see kind of how they're approaching either the problem or the task at hand. And then with that, I like to see where people light up. There are some things that are brought to the conversation that you just tell that is somebody's main thing that they love working on. And I love when you see somebody say something that they completely light up and they're like, yes, and they go on a rant and they're like, these are all the things we can do, and here are all the highlights, and they're very much into it. And when you can see that, it's like, okay, you're passionate about this. I want you to do something that you're passionate about. I want you to be able to own that fully and to kind of show us how we can align with that and then also build off of that passion. So I think that's kind of my main way that I work through that, is like hoping to kind of spark conversation while also just like allowing people to take the reins where they truly feel like they fit in and they can own that part of the project.
That's great. Excuse me, I was doing a little coughing right there, Christina. I had to go on mute. That's wonderful. So you're figuring it out, but actually what you're doing is you're setting up a pattern of leadership behavior. And that's great. And it's coming and you're sort of standing back and strategically looking at it. So that's wonderful. I mean, you're doing the work to get there. I want to change to another topic now, and I want to talk about race and gender. So important to know where we are on this issue, who influence us, who challenge us, what are the issues. So let's kind of take this on, okay? How has race or gender influenced your work experience within the credit union? And what other ways does race and gender come to mind at this point? And you maybe want to talk about barriers, okay? Have you had any barriers yet in your career as a woman or a person of color? So who wants to start as we get into this conversation about race and gender? Because it's around us. It's around us a lot these days.
I can start. So that is kind of where I live, right? So I look at multiculturalism. So I look at gender expression, I look at race and ethnicity, I look at generation and how age plays a part in it. And not only in the way that we walk through our own personal lives, but also through as an employee, as somebody who is in a professional setting. And so seeing that happen and seeing it play out and seeing how the research reflects my own personal experiences, but then also just having my own personal experiences. So I've definitely see boundaries that come into play either because of, well, basically all parts of my identity, right? It's hard to separate it out and say it's specifically because of one part of it. I am Mexican, I am a woman, I am younger in the industry, and I focus on multicultural. And a lot of the time when I come into a conversation, I am met with that barrier of people not fully wanting to listen or not wanting to see me as my full self, or not seeing my experiences as valid as theirs. And I learned that when I was first coming in as a full-time employee, that I had to bring 10 different resources for everything that I wanted to bring to the table, or else people were not going to accept it. If I had a statistic, it was questioned. It was, well, are you sure about that? All of these questions always came up. Like, oh, well, I think I heard something different. And I would come in with 10 different resources saying, here is when this article had it, and this is when it was done in a different research project. And I would have to do that in order to get a point across that I knew was true, not only because of personal experiences, personal research, and insights that I've been gathering over time, but all of that kind of combined. And seeing how that had to advocate for myself so much more in order to get the same conversation across or to get a seat at the table. But also seeing that pay off and then being able to create personal relationship with those people where that no longer happens. Not to say that happened immediately. That was years in the work of finally having people see me for who I am in my entirety and not just as those parts of my identity that they were questioning.
That's amazing. Let's hear from someone else, and then I want to comment and sort of give my experience because I'm quite a few years older than you folks, and definitely had to deal with this along the racial lines as I was growing professionally. Zara, do you want to take this on?
Yeah. So I feel like I've kind of been lucky because I've been shielded because we have a African-American CEO who's the founder, started this credit union. She's been the CEO all 26 years and has led the organization, but she's only one of 2 Black CEOs of credit unions in the city of Toledo. And I've heard some of the stories just about how, they've been treated in different rooms. And although in my work environment, I'm not experiencing that, I'm not shielded when I step outside of the building on behalf of the credit union. Because as the program manager, I'm out in community. That is my passion, is working in community and being able to get everything that I can possibly for the credit union and our members. And how do we connect with different organizations? How do we go out and say, this is what the community needs? How do we partner? We want to make this happen. We want to work with you. You need to work with us, because just like we're needed, you're needed as well. And so I've been in situations where I've gone to the table to say, well, this is what's going on, and been completely dismissed. I actually had an incident that was maybe 2 weeks ago where I went to a community meeting as a representative of the credit union. And when I stepped up there, the individual who was running the meeting, had to come to my aid because an older gentleman basically was just very disrespectful. Well, you shouldn't be at the table anyway. And it's hard to hear that, not just as a woman, as a young woman, but it's hard to hear that from people who look like me too. So when you have that masculinity, that's, I want to say, toxic masculinity in Black males that gets directed at you publicly, it's hard. And like I said, I'm lucky in the environment that I'm in, the work environment. But when I step out to represent the credit union, it's like I have to put on, the full armor before I step out, because I never know what is going to come at me. And how do I make sure that my face doesn't say anything, that I don't say anything out of place, because I'm representing the credit union, but I'm also a woman. So I have to make sure that I don't get disrespected, but am firm in it. And also don't let it show that it's affected me. And so those are the things that I would say for me as a Black woman, a young Black woman. Those are the things that I've dealt with and felt. And it's almost like, how do we address that culture? Because literally, I don't know how, because I think it happens far more often than we talk about it. And it's not necessarily, I'm sorry, I'm getting, I don't know how to articulate what I'm trying to say. Well, it has to be addressed. Yeah. And it's difficult for us. We kind of shake it off because we have to keep moving. We have to keep working. But to even talk about it, it's like, well, what did you expect? Because that's just how it is, but it shouldn't be how it is. And that is something that we deal with on a regular basis as young women of color.
Yes, also true. I mean, you're speaking truth to power. So thank you for that, because I'm sure that all of us, on the panel, and certainly, attending this conference, has felt that in one way or another. I know I have. Christina, Danya, you want to share?
I think the thing that I have seen that's similar for me is that my own home credit union has mostly been has not had the same pronounced barriers or the same pronounced overt or covert racism or sort of gender power things going on, right? And then I feel like I can extend that generally to the broader CDCU community. But then when we start to step outside of that to like chapter, right, like our association league chapter events, national events, and things like that, it's a completely different story, right? And so I think that is where having conversations like these and having affinity groups can be really supportive, because it can be lonely, isolating, frustrating, make you question if like this is the industry for you, or all of those things. And I think that's in terms of even internally, though, I think our organization can fall into some of that progressive organization traps. And I think you really have to keep an eye out for those structures that are going to perpetuate racism, despite anyone and everyone's best intentions, right? So, and have a good way to like name that and discuss that among yourselves. So we've worked with different organizations, and this is work that really just needs to continue to have self-assessments at our organization and really name some uncomfortable dynamics and try to continue that work. And one of the consultants we've worked with has really encouraged us to go beyond calling it the very popular diversity, equity, and inclusion, and really name it as anti-racism, to kind of call out what we're talking about here instead of stepping around it. In currently popular language, right? So I like the diversity, equity, and inclusion framework, but I definitely we're getting behind that. And I think that's an important distinction.
I think that is really brave, and whoever the folks are that are saying, let's call it what it is daring to be vulnerable. And that's when you get really down to the nitty gritty and start to deal with some stuff that's out there. Danya, what do you think about this issue?
Yes, well, I definitely agree with my colleagues on the panel. When I think about gender and race and even age, I know that's been brought up in my personal career. I'm fortunate because when I first started my career, especially in credit unions, I lived in a minority majority state. So being a person of color wasn't weird, wasn't odd, was the norm. And so if I reflect, most often in my career, I was the only Black female, or I was the youngest female in the room. I was never the only female in the room. And so because of that, you know, when I was part of that senior management team, it was gender balanced. Although I was the youngest one there, when I moved over to a different credit union, our executive team was pretty much female dominant. So being able to see women in leadership roles was something that I was able to see regularly. Now, both of those sets could have been more culturally balanced, right? Or quote unquote diverse. But the barriers I think that I've encountered were, I think, less of being a female or person of color, but it was almost like coming in as either the new person or the new leader into an established system. And whether those systems struggled because of their lack of DEI framework or acknowledgement, I happened to be like the new voice that happened to be young, or the new voice that also happened to be a Black female. And so I think that made me work a little harder for people to see my work, let it speak for itself. Unfortunately, with some people, you just have to earn extra trust, right? And their respect. And I think by doing that, they got to see the differences, whether it's because of my age or being Black or being a female. They add color, no pun intended, but they add value to the conversation or the discussion, or you know, can even serve as a catalyst to respectfully challenge those established systems and business as usual. Oh, Deborah, you're still on mute.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. I've been just communicating with Monica, and there are folks that, you know, want to ask you questions. I have a couple more questions, and I'll jump in there if it gets silent, because I want to talk about, you know, what are the ways that men can be good allies, and how do we need to engage and inspire our male coworkers? So that's the other side of the coin, you know. So, but we'll get there hopefully. If not, Monica, I want to turn it over to you to open up the discussion.
Yes, so thank you. It does, as I noted in the chat for the group, you are welcome to type in your question, but you know, it's a meeting format, so you're also welcome to unmute if you have a question, and we can take it from there. See if anybody's had any burning things that I know people were giving you +1s and kind of acknowledging your comments throughout, but if there were any questions, if you wanted any follow-up. Yeah, yes, Hazel May, go for it.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, everyone. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm on my cell phone, so this is a new experience for me, but I'm so glad I was able to catch this this webinar with all of you beautiful, inspiring women. And I know a few of you personally, and I hope to get to know both you, Christina and Zara, in the future, but I just want to thank you for your honesty, your vulnerability, and just you being present in this industry. You have a long runway to go, and I'm like just proud to do this work with you. I do have a question though. As someone who's continuing to do this myself and kind of practice this, I want to be real with everyone about like the fact that we're going to make mistakes and we're going to learn from them. And that in turn builds our resiliency and our opportunity to continue growing as leaders. So I would love to hear from each of you or whoever feels inspired to chat about your practices of yourself and understanding where you are on that resiliency scale and what are you doing to continue to learn and inspire us continually on how we can maybe follow in your footsteps or learn from each other.
Hey, Hazel May, it's Danya. I'm so glad you're on this one too, and great time on the last series. When you were saying the word resiliency, something that came to mind for me is two things. One, assume positive intent and remain curious. And we talked about this during the ACUC. We have a DEI Financial Academy, and we talk about having curiosity without judgment. And so I think that helps in the journey. That way you don't take offense. Sometimes when people are asking certain questions or may say something, they may not even realize it's a microaggression or how it could come off. And so if you can just assume positive intent, not take it personally, remain curious, see if that person is willing to dialogue with you, I think you have a better chance. I've experienced, from my experience, that seems to afford me a better pathway to being resilient and staying committed to improving myself and then those that are in my sphere of influence.
Great question, Hazelmay. Great question. Thank you for that.
Hi, Hazelmay. So glad that you could come. Great to see you on calls always. I think I kind of have two things to add here. The first one is to the idea that resiliency. My go-to is always to ask more questions, right? Because I think a lot of it is like if people are saying things or if the things that can be taken the wrong way, it's trying to get to that common understanding of either what is information that's missing or what is the other side of that conversation. And so sometimes it takes me a day and I need to get back to that person later. But I always like to kind of circle back and ask questions and kind of figure out where the misunderstanding is, or if there is no misunderstanding, how do we get to kind of understand each other's viewpoints? I think that's extremely important in being able to work together and being able to move forward. And I think when it comes to like my own mistakes and how I kind of walk through that, the way that I see my research is that there is no like dead end. Even if you find something, you have nothing that you can pull from it, you've crossed off one of those paths, and that in itself is progress. And so I think about that a lot when I go through how I work. If I have done something and maybe it didn't turn out the way that I wanted it to, or there was a mistake that I made along the way, that is not a step backwards. It is a step forward in learning of the better way to do something the next time. And so that's how I continue to kind of reframe my mindset so that way I don't get too in my head, but rather more so saying, okay, learning experience, moving forward, next step, and being able to really grow from that experience consistently.
Yeah, I'm gonna piggyback off of Stella, because, and I say it all the time, Monica hears it from me all the time, it is trial by fire with me here. So every time that there is something that comes up, it's like, okay, let me take a step back, let me make the phone calls and the emails that I need to send and ask the questions that, hey, this happened and I don't understand why it happened. How do we fix this? Or before this happens or before we send this out, let me make sure, let me do the double check to make sure that it is the way that it's supposed to be. And I find myself just overall, I want to tell you that this is probably the most that I have talked all week. But I'm that person that sits back and I just try to listen as much as possible. My go-to question is, how can I help you? And that moves me forward because people are going to tell you what they need. And if you can fulfill those needs within the organization, then you're not going to have to worry about mistakes because you're doing what you're supposed to do. So I'm always trying to step back and just, okay, I'm listening. Talk to me. Tell me what you need. How can I help? How can we help? So that we can, move forward and make sure that it is the way that it's supposed to be versus me trying to have to correct it and fix it.
And I want to echo what everyone has said so far. I think there's some really important points in there. I think the only thing I will just add is getting comfortable with some maybe painful public to your credit union, right, or your workplace accountability when you do make mistakes. It is not fun, but it is modeling, right? I think in part it's modeling, right? Because we want everyone to be accountable when they make mistakes. And it's also, if the mistake is damaging trust, you've got to do that in a way so that you can repair it and move forward. So I think being able to do that and being able to depersonalize mistakes or negative feedback as much as possible is also helpful. So I just repeat to my mantra is that it's data. It's data that I need to take in and use to make changes. Yeah.
Great, all powerful answers. Thank you all for that. Do we
Is
have another
there-
question?
It looks like Kat, go for it. Seems like you're unmuted.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. So we touched earlier on the importance of mentorship. Growing up, like some of you, I was the eldest, so I felt like a natural leader. Now that I'm a bit more mature, I'm trying to understand the importance of having a mentor. So my question to the panel is, how important is race and gender in identifying your mentor? Is it important or not?
So personally, I love that question. Because for me, growing up, I came from predominantly white institutions. Everything was a PWI. My schooling, my mentors in college and things like that, because that's what was available to me. And when I came into the credit union movement, it was the very first time that I had a mentor that was also a woman and a person of color. And I think that that was really important to me. So that way I had somebody that went through similar experiences and understood what it took for me to get to the point that I was at. Not to say that I didn't have amazing white male mentors as well, who helped me a lot to see the other side of the perspective and understand the corporate setting and to understand what I was never taught or what I never like lived into. And so I think getting both sides of that was really important. One, to really grow professionally in a setting and like how to adapt in a setting that I was never really like knew anything about. And the other, to kind of be able to sit in my emotions and also be able to have somebody that understood my journey. And so I really think having both sides of that was really helpful for me.
I know we're going to be teaming up with the African American Credit Union Coalition and join their mentorship program. So we're really excited about that. So thank you, Donia.
Yeah, absolutely, Kat. I was excited to see you on the call, and thank you for that question. I think really, I echo what Sela said. You know, when I think about my mentors, they run the gamut in terms of gender, ethnicity, and I think, you know, a mentor is someone who, a good mentor is someone who has a shared experience or has a certain skill that maybe you may not possess or want to flex a little bit more. And whatever knowledge they have that can be shared with you is a good mentor, right? And sometimes I would not limit necessarily mentorship just based on people who look like you, because it takes all types. We live in a world that is diverse, and we need to know, in my personal opinion, the perspectives of others. And so I would highly encourage participation in the AACC mentorship program, but also, you know, considering all types of mentors based on the personal need that you're trying to develop.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would second that. And I do think that it is important to be able to, even if, like in my case, my primary mentor, we have a lot of differences, age, gender, race and ethnicity, religion, right? But we built a very strong, powerful, long-lasting relationship. But I will tell you, there were definitely points where we butted heads or where I felt like they were unintentionally not understanding or really being pretty insensitive to my ethnic background and to the experience and knowledge that I brought because of that. So I think you gotta balance it out, right? I think having multiple mentors in that case ends up being more important. So you have another voice to go to.
Thank you.
And I would have to echo everyone's sentiment. So wrapped around me is that list of people that you can call. And they look different, they're different genders, they're different ethnicities. They've been in the credit union movement for X amount of years, or they're not even in the credit union movement. They might be in city government, or they may be in just the CDFI area, period. And so being able to make those phone calls and ask those questions and get different perspectives on the same thing, I just think overall it's important to have, you know, a plethora of people in your bag. And so, yeah, a little bit of everything helps.
Thank you.
So I think, you know, we are kind of wrapping up in terms of time, and I do know that this is the winter season and people are doing a lot of year-end wrap up and close out. So Deborah, is there a final question you want to close with? Or
Yeah, this has been tremendous for me. I mean, I am so proud to be part of this movement and to have you folks sitting at our kitchen table. I have learned so much from you. You are so smart. You are right on top. You know, you are just really hitting the ground running. I can't tell you what an experience as a facilitator this has been. I just wanted to sit back and listen. I didn't want to really ask any questions. I just wanted to listen to what you have to say because you are so professionally mature already in the space. And again, it was an honor to facilitate these questions and just an honor to be here with you. And I'm going to make sure somehow through Monica that I stay in touch with you as long as I stay with Inclusiv and do this work, because I want to bring you back to some of the other credit unions that I'm working with in the Black community space, which in 2023, you're so powerful. I have one more question. You are all very busy. How do you fulfill yourself? I mean, how do you move away and take care of self? I'm really interested in knowing that, because this business, this credit union business movement can really drain you. I'm on the board of a credit union now, and believe me, I know. So can anyone give me any tips? You know, how do you fulfill yourself? Or what fulfills you?
I will throw something out that I did. So I'm Mohawk, I'm Kayake Haga. And so what I started doing really around the time that I took on the CEO role is I started learning my language again. And maybe that doesn't sound relaxing to add that in, but honestly, in many ways it was. In part, it felt like something that I was just doing for myself, right? I wasn't doing it for my son, though in many ways I hope that eventually that will connect. I wasn't doing it for work. And I got to learn again and not be in charge and not be the teacher and not be the leader, but just have to learn and be a student. And that was just such a nice change of pace for me too, right? So it felt really fulfilling in many ways.
Great. Anyone else wants to share what fulfills them?
I'll go. So I coach volleyball too still. I'm the head coach at the high school I graduated from, of both the girls and boys programs. So when I come to work, so when I come to work, I don't feel like I'm at work because all I do is community stuff and it's like my life. So that's like how I live. So I don't feel like I'm stressed at work, but I go and I coach volleyball, and we started a new nonprofit volleyball club for inner city youth to offer it. If anybody knows anything about volleyball, it's a prep sport. It costs a lot of money, but we're doing it at cost and little to no cost for youth in our community. And we're keeping it in the inner city so that they don't have to go way out to the suburbs to the bigger clubs. And then I also, in the spring session, I always re-enroll in ballet. I was a dancer, so I go take ballet and try to get myself back on some point shoes. And I spend, Monday evenings at ballet class. So that's what I do for myself.
That's great. I took ballet too, so can appreciate that. Anyone else?
I'm the same. I'm a bit of an introvert, so working remotely, especially since the pandemic, I found it's very important to know when to stop, when to log off, when to shut it down, because all of our work can be so all-consuming, but you have to stay at the top of your game, and the way to do that is to step away sometimes. For me to refuel, sometimes it's, doing a craft, working out, or dancing. Zara, let's talk. or just spending time with family. So real basic things, but the things that you don't want to pass up or miss out on, because again, that's at least how I have to get refueled.
Great.
I think, so Danya, I had the exact same thing. I work from home, and learning to stop was something that I had a lot of trouble with, especially in the beginning. Research was my free time and my pastime prior to work. And so having to really put that pause there was extremely important. Something that I started doing pretty recently is I help to mentor some high school kids. And so helping them kind of plan out their future and kind of see the world through their eyes is super fulfilling. And I love being able to see that and talk with them. Another thing that I do when it's warmer outside than it is now is I play tennis. So being able to be active and kind of like up and moving after sitting in maybe meetings or talking and presentations all day is just, it's nice to be up and moving.
Those are all great things. Well, don't let them get away from you. Continue to make them part of your routine, because this work gets pretty heavy at times. So thank you again. It's been my honor, my pleasure, and I hope in some way or shape that we could stay in touch. Thank you. Monica?
All right, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and close this out. We appreciate you all for presenting, and thank you all for joining us for this session and even all 3 parts of the series. So we hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. It's been a very popular, engaging series to do. And so last year we were able to host a Women's History Month webinar. And so maybe that will be the next opportunity come March. So we'll look for another opportunity to bring really dynamic, inspirational women together. I hope you all have a wonderful holiday break, and we look forward to staying in touch by email. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much.